As many of us do know, the New York Rangers have had a pretty up and down season. There have been some high moments and some very, very low moments as well throughout this season. It has not been consistent by any means. There has been a lot of inconsistent play from this team and, a lot of question marks about this team kind of going forward and how good they're going to be and, whether or not we should see head coach Peter Laviolette and or general manager Chris Drury, remain with this team after this season. So we're going to talk a bit more about that, kind of talking about whether or not these kind of people should be fired, but also maybe why I don't think Peter Laviolette deserves maybe as much blame as he's getting. And I understand that obviously he is the head coach and he has a pretty major role to play with this team having some success. He's got to be at the top there, leading this team, motivating the guys, putting out those lines, figuring out the PK units, power play units, obviously with his assistant and stuff like that too. But he's the main guy there who's making these coaching decisions as the head coach. That's pretty clear. But I just really don't think Peter Laviolette is maybe as much to blame as some Rangers fans think. And I fully understand that maybe you do want to see him, fired this upcoming offseason. And I'm not against that either. I understand that maybe getting a new head coach in here, whether or not we do, see a major change to this roster, which I am definitely hoping for. If you're not at least going to change up the roster, in a pretty massive way, at least getting a new coaching staff could possibly make a bit of sense there. And, I definitely think no matter what, a guy like Housley, has to go there, kind of the more defensive coach there. Things just have not worked out with him. I think a guy like Michael Pekka, he's done a decent job, though. We saw the Rangers take a bit of a jump up in faceoffs last year, so that was kind of nice. And, there are other aspects of the game where I think this coaching staff has done a decent job, but there are obviously moves that can definitely be made with this coaching staff, whether or not Peter Laviolette does stay. But if we're being honest here, I really don't think Laviolette is kind of maybe the main problem with this team. For example, I don't think if you're firing Laviolette, let's say, you bring in a new head coach and, you keep this kind of main core group of guys together, that some other coach is going to be able to, fully kind of turn this team around. And that's kind of the thing where you take a look at this past offseason, for example, going into it, the offseason, this past one, after losing in 6 games to the Florida Panthers, we kind of knew as Rangers fans for the most part there what this team needed more of, right? And that was some physicality. You had to add in some more physical players, which they kind of did by adding in the Sam Carrick, but that was really it. And then the only kind of big move, let's say, that happened this offseason after we heard so much kind of talk about possibly seeing the Rangers go out there and make a massive splash trade, well, that big move ended up being trading for a middle six winger in Riley Smith, who was obviously on the kind of maybe later part of his career. Still a good player, but he's obviously not in his kind of absolute prime. So I think when you really take a look at it, you compare the team from last season to this one, there weren't that many changes, and the only big changes were like adding a fourth-line center like Sam Carrick, who I thought that was a great move, but he's a fourth-line center. He's not going to have the most impact in the world. He's not going to be able to completely kind of turn this team around and really get them on track just by himself. He's a fourth-line center. It's not going to happen. It's not realistic. And then you go out there, and your big move is Riley Smith, a middle six winger, which, again, I didn't think that move was necessarily bad, but with it being your biggest move, that is quite bad because this team obviously was not good enough to come into this season and be once again a truly elite Stanley Cup contender. I'm not saying they were necessarily like a top tier cup contender last season, but they were still one of the true cup contending teams last season. Whether or not we had the best overall roster on paper, we still had Igor Shesterkin with the way that team was playing and with, mainly with Igor in the playoffs there. And this team definitely had a chance to possibly win that cup and maybe, so we get a couple more wins there against, Florida and obviously go into the finals potentially. So I just think, Laviolette really isn't as much to blame as some people are putting it out to be. And with how this roster is built and with how many kind of older players there is on this team right now and even last season coming over to this season there, it wasn't really going to ever be that insanely shocking if some of these older kind of guys like even a Chris Kreider took a decent step back in his game, right? I mean, we saw Chris Kreider have a much better season last season than this season, and there have been injuries and stuff like that as well this season, but if we're being honest here, at some point, Chris Kreider was going to take a step back in his game, and he wasn't going to be that consistent kind of, around 30-plus goal scorer. He wasn't going to be that every single season, and we're seeing it this year where he's had, pretty much no assists. He's had a few assists here and there, but other than that, he's not getting an assist there. He's not playing a great overall game, so I think it's not terribly surprising that we have seen a step back in, a few of these guys on this team who are definitely aging. And we have seen quite a few moves this season so far to attempt to change this team and change up this roster and kind of retool a bit on the fly here, which I kind of liked. I think this, JT Miller trade was good. I like that move for this team for right now and going forward. I think, the Ryan Lindgren trade to get some assets back for them and, bringing that depth guy like Calvin DeHaan, a potential kind of, fourth or third line player in Yusuf Parson and maybe You added some picks there. That was nice. I didn't love the Capo Kako trade initially, but I'm starting to like it a little more here as we are seeing, Will Borgen play, a decent game there. He's obviously locked up now, which definitely makes that deal even better with the Rangers getting back a couple draft picks and also locking up Borgen, so he's not going to be able to leave in free agency for nothing. He's also won a decent contract, so I think that's, a fine trade there. And this team is starting to go in a different direction, which I am very happy with. So that's also kind of the reason why I don't think Laviolette can be blamed as much as he is because of how many moves have been made in the middle of this season there. We saw Jacob Trouba, the captain, get traded over to Anaheim. Then we saw Urho Vakanainen come to the Rangers. Then you see Capo Kako get traded over to Seattle. Then we see Borgen come to the Rangers. Then you see, obviously, Philip Hedl and Victor Mancini, two players who were at moments playing with the Rangers. Obviously, Victor was up and down a little bit, but he's still playing at moments with the Rangers. He gets dealt away alongside Hedl over to the Canucks for JT Miller and a couple of the pieces there as well. So there's been a lot of kind of moving pieces. And then around the deadline, you see, Yusuf Parson and Calvin DeHaan come in the door for Jimmy Vesey and Ryan Lindgren off the roster. You also see a guy like Riley Smith, middle six kind of guy, get traded away. And then the Rangers, obviously end up flipping that pick that they got for Riley for Carson Soucy. So there's another defenseman coming in the door. So there have just been so many moves that have happened so far this season. And also we saw a guy like Arthur Kaliya get claimed off waivers. We have seen, some prospects kind of go up and down. And I'm really not trying to say that Peter Laviolette is kind of, not to blame at all for the Rangers not playing great this season, but I just think there are definitely some factors that have gone into this season where I don't think, he is necessarily kind of fully to blame by any means, and definitely shouldn't be even kind of the main person to blame maybe. And this is where I kind of want to talk a bit about Chris Drury, because he is the guy who puts this team together, and he has had multiple seasons now to go up there and change up the core of this roster. He did not do so until the middle of this season. We have seen the exact same core of guys since Chris Drury was here and hired after, we saw Jeff Gorton go out the door there. He goes over to Montreal, and then we see Chris Drury become the general manager. Since he has become the general manager, we have not really seen any big core changes to this roster. We saw a guy like Pavel Buchnevich get traded away. He was a pretty core guy, but that was the kind of one of the main kind of, real core kind of changing moves that Chris Drury has made, and that was seeing one of those really good players go out the door. So really and truly, if being honest here, I don't think Chris Drury has given Peter Laviolette the kind of best built roster to have all this success and be a consistent top tier team in the NHL. Now, we saw this team maybe overperform a little bit with kind of the brand new coaching staff last season there. I think that's probably fair to say, especially in the regular season there. Maybe some of the kind of players were overperforming a little bit there, but come playoff time, we know why we got to the conference finals there, and that was Igor Shesterkin. The team didn't overperform there. It was just having the best goalie in the league, the best goalie in the world. That's why this team got to go to the conference finals there. So I think come playoff time, we know we're going to get out of a guy like Igor Shesterkin, but I think the rest of this roster needs to be built in a better way. And I have talked about this a lot, where I just don't think the roster, the way it's built right now with these core group of players, is really the best way to win a cup. I mean, we have the best goalie in the world come playoff time. He may not be playing like the best goalie right now, and that's definitely a fact. He's not playing like the best goalie in the world in the regular season, but over the last 3 playoff runs for the entire NHL, I would say he has been pretty much the clear, by far best goalie in the entire league. Come playoff time, he shows up and is just absolutely phenomenal. So we know we have a net come playoff time, but the main thing is building this roster in a better way around Igor and the rest of these kind of core guys. And I think we're seeing a kind of new core of players start to kind of be built around with, a Trocheck, a Will Coley, a Lafreniere, a Foxy, and kind of, JT Miller, kind of those guys instead of the Kreider, Zibanejad, and Panarins, and kind of Foxy. Obviously, Foxy's going to be here no matter what. He was part of this core and kind of the past core. But I think going forward, we're going to start to see a bit of a new core kind of hopefully starting to be built around with those kind of guys I just named. Obviously, we could use another kind of top 6 forward in there maybe, and another kind of maybe top 4, top pairing kind of defenseman. Absolutely. I think upgrading K'Andre Miller's kind of spot there would be a major kind of addition for this team. I think that's something that Chris Drury absolutely must do this offseason, is upgrade the defense core. We have obviously locked up a guy now like Urho Vakanainen on a 2-year deal. We saw Will Borgen get that extension. So the D-core is starting to shape up a little bit there, and we're seeing some of the pieces that are going to be here going forward, but I think we really need to see this team upgrade a spot on the defense core and add in another true kind of top four, top pairing caliber guy. And a guy like Carson Soucy, for example, I think was a nice add and definitely could be a nice kind of core piece for next season, as well as he is locked up with like a $3.25 million cap for next season. That's not bad at all. And a lot of Rangers fans have been critical of him, and I get that, but let's look at the entire team here. No one on the Rangers is playing exceptional right now. So a guy who just came in here and played, like a couple games so far, I think get a couple guy a little bit of a break there, especially when this D-core is missing their number one guy. And let's be honest here, Adam Fox is so by far the number one defenseman on this team. It's not even close, really. So I think when you're out a guy like that, Adam Fox, it's obviously a major loss for this team. And, really and truly, if you just take a look at this team right now with the way they've been playing, we have seen some of the exact same issues that we have seen for so many seasons now. It's the being able to play at 5-on-5, the lack of 5-on-5 scoring at moments, the lack of physical play, not having maybe enough shut down big defensemen back there on the back end. I think, adding at least one guy like that, a big, tall shutdown guy. Hopefully Carson Soucy can help with that, but I would like to see a true kind of maybe top pairing caliber guy. Obviously would be ideal to kind of add in there as a shutdown guy, but we might not get that. Either way though, this team relies way too much on their goalies to kind of carry this team along, especially come playoff time. So that's kind of why when you take a look at everything here so far this season, with all the moves that have happened, with the kind of lack of moves as well, in the offseason and stuff like that, I just think Chris Drury definitely deserves more of the blame than head coach Peter Laviolette. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content, as I do post every single day. So don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. I post every single day at 9 a.m. Eastern time. As well, don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on who do you think is kind of the most to blame there. You think it's Peter Laviolette? Do you think it's Chris Drury, the general manager? Do you think it's the players? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'll catch you next one, and let's go Rangers.